After practicing with this method, I was able to improvise hypnotic language patterns with anybody in any situation whenever I wanted, including really tough clients in therapy, for example, people who basically you feel like you're going nowhere with because whatever you say, they always have the counter argument to everything and they always switch to the topic of conversation whenever you are getting them to a breakthrough. But I could finally find a way around that. It may be your case actually. People who want to learn NLP language patterns are usually getting lost in quantity. They just don't know where to go anymore because there are way too many possibilities, books on the topic, 40 years plus of books on how to use this, what are the best NLP patterns for this, for that, and it is just overwhelming for somebody entering into the field who doesn't know where to start. A first trick that helped me personally, that maybe will help you too, is to divide into concrete categories. I have had many lists of categories for language patterns over the years about this situation, what works best with that type of person, etc. By now I have kind of enumerated into only 5 categories. Everything I hear, if you tell me about language patterns, mentally I'm gonna stick it into one of my 5 categories. The 5, open your ears widely, the 5 main categories are basically sleight of mouth, the Milton model, the MED model, sensory-based language, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and time distortion. Time distortion language, which basically is part of the Milton model, and the MED model is technically part of sleight of mouth. So all of them anyway are kind of mixed together. One language pattern that belongs to one category will obviously kind of belong to sometimes to another category. It's not the point of being so clear-cut like this, but it is the point of better understanding which type of language pattern fits best to which type of situation. Okay, I have a client in coaching who wants to change his career, pretty smart individual, just too stressed out, doesn't know how to let go of the stress. Okay, that's a specific profile of person I know how to help. Another type is the 40-year-old mom who is just getting divorced and doesn't really know how to handle her life now that her husband left. Okay, I have another really specific profile for this type of client. I know how to handle both. And although I may improvise, I may mix the techniques, I can give you very specifically, okay, with that person, this is what to say. With this person, it is how you need to say it. Maybe even the same phrases, but said differently and not at the same time. It is specifically the main thing you have to stick in your head. Language patterns are only relevant when they are being said at the right time, based on the person in front of you and based on the state they are into as you communicate with them. And even without mentioning the whole, build your coaching certification, become a coach, a therapist, even in a more general context, in your life in general, I see people almost every day who can't express themselves as they would like, they can't express their ideas, they can't stand up for themselves. And even people who are bright, they have great ideas, they don't want to cause any harm to anybody, but somehow people don't listen to them or don't really respect them, or they are not really able to explain what they want out of their relationship at work. When they are, if they have a job, they may have trouble to explain to their colleagues what is the limit, the boundaries not to cross, but they don't really know how to express that without being aggressive, which is not the point either. And just people who don't get or pursue the career they wish they could pursue because they can't persuade others effectively. On my end, I would say that I got through many different phases of learning, of different levels of mastery, and like the final level was basically almost a supernatural intuition of always knowing what to say in which moment, no matter that it is that I can be drunk, I can be sober, I can be tired, not tired. I kind of always know what to say, but that was like the last level, okay, the really last final level. But once I got there, one really funny thing I noticed is that no one ever was disrespecting me anymore. And we might say, oh, because I'm a tall guy, I look intimidating sometimes. Not really. First of all, I'm really not intimidating. I don't think so in my life in general. And if you take that side of the argument, I have a friend who is like way more intimidating than me physically, verbally, whatever you want. that guy is getting into verbal fights all the time. All the time. I never get into any verbal fight. I cancel them before they happen. What I realized through teaching my skills, because in the beginning it was unconscious competence and I was not really aware of what the hell am I doing, by teaching to you guys, what I realized is that the difference between my skills and what I see beginners doing is that I always place my communication as needed, as it is needed to avoid conflicts and I always tell people what they need to hear first, based on the state they're into. So if the person is super anxious, I'm not going to tell anything important to that person yet. If I was working somewhere and I had to ask for a paycheck or anything very important, or a suggestion for the company where I could work, for example, I would definitely notice the state the manager or the person above me is into. And if that person is stressed out, anxious, I would make a joke, for example, or just tell something to calm them down first, induce some more light-headed atmosphere, and then only, and like maybe even talk about their weekend or whatever, and then only talk about the main important thing. What do most people do? The exact opposite. They don't wait, they just want to tell what they want to say right away, or they just never say it because they are too unsure of how to. They don't even dare saying anything. So my point is that those skills, developing those skills with using language patterns at the right time, I'm underlining that again, the right time, not when the person is not receptive, but once the person is receptive, and only then can you use the Milton model, whatever you want. With those skills, you just become more attentive to all the unconscious signals that people give off all day long, and you may not even be aware of it. Just the way they speak, the change in their tonality when you mention the name of Trump or Obama or Biden. Whenever you say something, if they have a change of tonality in their voice, sometimes it is really slight, but that will be an indication of, okay, that politician I just named, any of those, this one I can talk about, this one, if I talk about it, it's going to get into a fight. Most people are not aware of that. They are just not aware of those micro signals, therefore they just get into completely useless verbal fights that lead nowhere, or since they are so stuck into their own mind, they just never say anything. Like, take the easy way. On the long term, it is more difficult to never say what you think and what you want, but they take the easy way in the short term, which is like, oh, I don't say anything, I just nod my head. Yeah. No, you're not always agreeing with everyone. Sometimes you disagree, and there is a moment to disagree once you have changed eventually the state of the person you communicate with. You can mention something they disagree. I used to play that game non-stop with some people close to me that I'm not going to mention because they might realize it if they watch those videos. Some people that I used to know, let's say, call it that way. I used to play that game all the time by first talking about something they love, that I know because I know them, and then only mentioning something I would like their advice for. One person specifically that I can mention because this one long ago, no longer a friend. One person, one time I had just suffered from a bad breakup, and I just wanted some support, you know. It was a male friend of mine. I just wanted some basic body support, and he was complaining about this last show he saw on Netflix or whatever. I'm not even sure what it was. Just he was in a very negative state. I first asked him questions about another show that he loved, and asked him in comparison what did he really love about this other show. And once I could see this gleam, this spark in his eyes again, then I went on talking about my problem. And that was such a great moment, because then he was being supportive. Knowing him as I knew him, if I had been talking about my problem when he was in that negative state, he would have just been super brutal and told me, oh, you should have complained, blah, blah, blah. Because that was the kind of guy he was when he was pissed off. But when he was in a good state, he was an angel, this guy. So it's always about reading the person, knowing where they are, and adapting, getting out of your head and adapting your communication so that you get what you want out of people. And at work, in therapy, in a coaching context, you can understand when your client is ready to let go of the limiting beliefs, and when your client is not ready at all. Slow down, take it with a pinch of salt. just ask them more questions first, and then you can go into reframing, into sleight of mouth, into any of those things. Which is basically the essence of the method I have developed that you can find down below to learn all those language patterns, how to organize your knowledge, and how to figure out what should I start with from all the things I read about or know about. What is the first thing I can do like today? Like really, we can stop for a minute fantasizing about, oh, someday when I can speak like Bandler. What can you do today? That is exactly how I have laid this out in the method down below. You can check that if you want in the description. It is really about figuring out, based on your level and based on the people you communicate with, what is the category of language patterns you need to use the most based on how they respond to you, based on the objections they keep or limiting beliefs they keep mentioning. Because when you get more attentive, you also notice the same limiting beliefs kind of always get in the way. When I started coaching people, it was always the same belief: I am not good enough. That was kind of the main thing that kept coming back about everything, about their work, about their relationship. So, okay, I am not good enough. Now I have something to work with, and I can practice language patterns, sleight of mouth with I am not good enough. For example, sleight of mouth, consequence pattern. I am not good enough. How can I reframe that with the consequence pattern? I could say, for example, out of my head, just like that, can you imagine what could happen if in the future you could remove this sense of uncertainty? If in the future you could somehow become more confident than ever? What would it look like? Okay, that's a very basic suggestion right here. But it is based on the concept of the consequence pattern, what will happen then. Of course, I did not say that exactly as it is laid out in the book, but I have understood the concept of the language pattern, consequence pattern, future, what will happen next, positive or negative, and now I just improvise. I improvise by now because I have been playing with those exercises for years, and after like 2 or 3 months, I could already start seeing the same beliefs coming up again in my conversations. So I kind of already knew how to respond to people when they were resisting with me or for whatever reason. I kind of already knew how to reply to them because I had seen that situation already before, and I knew how to adapt my language to them. If you use that learning method for 2 or 3 months, I would say, that's where progress really started to kick in, or kick off, or a kick basically for me. Your language will be much less hesitant and hazardous. You will be much more assertive whenever you want to convince somebody, and it will definitely organize your head. It will give you clarity for, okay, I have been watching 1,000 different videos about how to persuade others. Yeah, but in my case, I am not, like if you say, for example, I am not a tall guy, I'm not a big guy, I'm not assertive, I'm not that confident. What can I use then? Specifically, that is for you, or like for anybody, but the point is, every type of profile is mentioned in this course down below. Every profile is mentioned, and how can you adapt based on how you can communicate first. From the main categories of language patterns, you can notice which one fits you the most, because you definitely don't need to use all of them. You may need to use more certain parts of language patterns depending on the situation. But then what I encourage everyone to do is to build your own set of language patterns. Basically, you won't even be using mine or the ones from Milton Erickson or whatever. You will use your own language patterns, and that is specifically when all those things will become unconscious competence, because you won't think anymore about how to use it. It will be integrated into your daily communication anyway. So this is down below if you want to check that, and otherwise I will see you pretty soon nonetheless. See you soon.